Hi, I'm Elizabeth. Thank you so much for joining me. This video is actually a subsequent video to one I did earlier on organic fruits and veggies. And I'm doing this separately because I want to talk about meat and meat quality and organic meat. And I'm doing it separately because I think that this is worth its own focus and a little bit of education. Now, you might be asking yourself, why is someone who talks about sleep talking about organic meat or organic fruits or organic veggies? If you haven't already watched the organic fruit and veggie video, I'll put a link to that below. But the reason that I'm doing this is because my philosophy is about lifestyle and foundation and building all of these things up, which contribute to everything, to sleep, to energy, to how we feel, to our health, all of those things. And the quality of the food is actually a really important part of all of that. And quality fruits and veggies is important. Quality of meat is important. I just want to dive into this a little bit to make sure that you're an educated consumer when it comes to the food that you're choosing and that you're choosing the best options for you and your family and your life, essentially. So let's talk a little bit about meat. Organic meat typically means that the animal, I'm going to talk a lot about cows in this example, so we'll just stick to that for now. So that a cow is fed organic food and is not allowed, has never been given any sort of drugs or antibiotics. Before I get into the concept of what does organic meat look like, I need to talk a little bit about bioaccumulation. So if you've never heard this phrase before, essentially it means that things accumulate as you move up the food chain. When we're exposed to anything toxic, pesticide, a drug, anything basically that we would be, any sort of chemical or anything we would be exposed to, it's our body's job to eliminate that naturally. And we have lots of systems for that. So we've got our liver, we've got our kidneys, we've got our skin, we've got all sorts of ways to eliminate that. But sometimes it's not possible to eliminate things either entirely, or sometimes it's not possible to eliminate things quickly enough before they come in again. And the things that we can't eliminate, as this is, I'm speaking as humans, but all living organisms, the things that we can't accumulate tend to get stored in our fat cells. So let's look at a cow, for example. If a cow is grazing on grass that it has that has just been sprayed with a whole bunch of pesticide, that means the cow is eating pesticides. Now, the cow's body will eliminate some of that pesticide, but what it can't eliminate gets stored in the cow's fat cells. So the cow has that grass on Monday and then on Tuesday and then on Wednesday and on and on and on. By the end of that cow's life, when it's slaughtered and then we as humans eat it, or as omnivores, I should say, not all humans eat meat, but as omnivores eat it, we get exposed to that cow's entire lifetime supply of pesticides or toxins or whatever it was exposed to in that one meal. These toxins accumulate up the food chain. So fish is another good example of this. Tuna is a really, really big fish that eats medium fish, which eat smaller fish, which eat like the plants and stuff at the bottom. And so as you get up the fish world, as you get bigger, mercury becomes more of a problem because mercury bioaccumulates. It's very hard for it to get to eliminate. And so then we eat that tuna and that mercury accumulates in us. So if you eat too much tuna that has too much mercury in it, you can actually suffer from mercury poisoning. So that's what I mean by bioaccumulation. And this is why I think that this topic deserves its own focus, because we will be doing the same thing. We will be bioaccumulating pesticides, toxins, chemicals, whatever we're eating, even if we're vegetarian. So if we're or vegan, if we're just eating vegetables that are non-organic, we're going to be bioaccumulating those things. But when we're exposed to meat like on a one-off, that bioaccumulation adds up pretty quickly. So that's my little preamble towards the meat and bioaccumulation and why I'm talking about this. When we talk about organic meat, and I'm actually going to stick to talking about cows for now because they're a pretty clear example. I can kind of talk about them the whole way through. This does not mean that the same is not closely true. It's not entirely, but closely true for chickens, for pigs, for all of those things that we eat as humans. But when we talk about cows, an organic cow or organic beef tends to mean or should mean that the beef has been or the cow has only eaten organic feed and has never been exposed to antibiotics or other drugs. Cows eat grass. seems simple. That's a sort of a silly statement to make because that's relatively well known. If you've ever driven by a field and you've got cows there munching along, cows are supposed to eat grass. The reason that I say this is because it's actually not quite as clear as that. Back in the, oh my gosh, the 40s or the 50s, I can't remember the decade, I'm sorry, but back, you know, that's probably 70, 80 years ago now, America had an abundance of corn being produced. So corn was a crop that could grow really quickly for really cheap, was harvested, but there ended up being quite an abundance of it, and nobody really knew what to use it for. So in come the scientists to discover what are the things that we can do with corn to get the most nutrition out of it, to get the most money out of it, to get all sorts of things out of it. One of those things that was discovered was good old high fructose corn syrup, which is not your friend. It was put into things years ago. It still is. If you see that on a label, you definitely want to put it back on the shelf. But high fructose corn syrup was one of those offshoots of that. But another offshoot of that was cows. So scientists discovered that you can feed cows corn and they'll get real big real quick and they'll grow real fat. So that what does that mean? It means that you don't have to feed them for as long before you can take them to slaughter. And it means that they're larger, they're heavier, they weigh more, which means you're going to get more money per cow. And it means that you can feed them more efficiently, right? So all in all, it was a fantastic recipe for higher cost to the farmer, to the person selling the cow. You were getting more money, higher revenue, not cost, higher revenue with lower cost. Capitalism at its finest. So factory farms were built and all sorts of cows were put in and fed all sorts of corn. Now, if you're an expert in factory farming, I will say I'm not pretending to be, and I know that farming practices have changed a lot. I'm just giving a little bit of context to this from a big picture perspective, because while there's a lot of change that has happened in different industries, this is still something that happens. Okay, so back to our farm. So all these cows are here, they're fed all sorts of grain, but cows eat grass, not grain. So what did we find when we found that cows were eating grain a lot? We found that they were growing quickly, but that usually meant that it was a lot of fat. So these cows became obese. That fat ended up being really poor quality, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. These cows were not healthy. And because these cows were not eating the grass normally or exclusively grass, what they should have been eating, they ended up getting sick a lot more. So their immune systems were not doing what they should have been doing. Add that to the fact that now you've got hundreds or thousands of cows in a contained space, and disease travels like wildfire. So when farmers decided to feed their cows all this grass, they realized their cows were getting sick. Well, the solution to that was drugs. We'll medicate them, we'll give them antibiotics to help prevent them from getting sick or treat them when they are sick. Don't get me wrong, antibiotics are one of the most incredible inventions that we as humans have made. They're a wonderful tool, they're really important. Antibiotic use in agriculture is a big problem. 82%, that's a number that I found recently. I don't know when that is from, I have to say, but 82% of antibiotic use goes towards agriculture. So if you think of the amount of antibiotics that humans are prescribed, we basically are prescribed antibiotics for a lot of different things, sometimes even things that we shouldn't be. But of the 100% of antibiotics that exist, 82% of them go to use in agriculture. And some of that is for treatment. So antibiotics in cows are great for treating mastitis and for treating other infections, but much of it is for prevention. So just preventatively giving them antibiotics before they get sick. So organic, I'm just going to come back to this for a second. Organic means that they're fed organic food and that they're not allowed to use antibiotics. There's a lot of debate about whether or not that antibiotic use in cows impacts us as humans. There is no clear answer. Overusing antibiotics in humans does absolutely deplete the gut bacteria. So if you know, if you or someone that you know is on routine uses of antibiotics, everybody would recommend to you, your healthcare practitioners, naturopaths, pharmacists should all be recommending to be getting on probiotics, because when you're taking out the bacteria in your gut, in your body, you also want to be replenishing it with the good stuff. Does that antibiotic use in cows translate to the same thing? I don't know. Theoretically, maybe. It is possible that some of that regular antibiotic use in cows we get exposed to in some way, shape, or form as humans when we eat the cows. That's really not clear, and we cannot say that definitively. But we do know that the antibiotic use in cows is impacting our environment. So it's creating, well, antibiotic use in animals. It's creating antibiotic resistant bacteria. It's making antibiotics less effective. So we do know it's having a greater impact. Whether it's having an individual impact when you eat meat, hard to say. Okay, so where does fat fit into all this? Because I just mentioned about fat. Fat is a separate conversation. I want to talk about the health of fat and what fats are good and all of that another day. But I want to just touch on two main fats that for my story here right now, which is omega-3 and omega-6. Omega-3 fats are anti-inflammatory, so they help turn down inflammation in the body. Omega-6 fats are pro-inflammatory, so they help turn up inflammation in the body. You need both of those. They're both required in your diet. What is key is the ratio between the two. You do need a little bit more of omega-6. We tend to eat too much more omega-6, but cows that are fed mostly grain have more fat in their body than cows that are fed mostly grass, so higher fat, and way more omega-6 than omega-3s. So cows that are fed grass tend to have more healthy fats than cows that are fed grains, or mostly grains like corn, for example, which is higher in omega-6s. So just from a fat profile alone, knowing what your cow is eating, is it grains or is it grass, can make a big difference in the quality of the meat that's coming out. Okay, so I should be buying organic meat. Well, it's not quite that simple. So remember when I said that organic meat requires that it's grown in an organic farm, so it's a certified organic farmer feeding them certified organic feed, and without any antibiotic use. I mentioned this in the video about fruits and veggies. Organic certification can be extremely time intensive, cost intensive, and difficult to obtain, especially for smaller farmers. So just because meat is labeled organic, so if meat is labeled organic, it is organic, but it's possible that there are other small local farmers producing close to organic meat or maybe organic meat without actually meeting the certification. So that is just kind of one point. Sometimes farmers do need to be able to use non-organic things. So if a cow does get mastitis, that is a really difficult thing to deal with. And so the antibiotic use in that cow might be really important, but it might be the same as, you using antibiotics once or twice in your life. It's that cow using it once or twice in your life. Does that make a difference between, using antibiotics every day versus using antibiotics once in the cow's life, or maybe twice in the cow's life? But once that cow uses antibiotics means it's no longer considered organic. As far as I understand, you can correct me if I'm wrong, and it's not allowed any antibiotic use. And so giving a little bit of leeway in some of these situations might be beneficial for everybody. But the one thing I want to highlight about organic meat and cows is that just because it's organic, it means it's fed organic food, but it doesn't tell you what food. It's possible to feed an organic cow organic corn. Okay, I'm going to say that again. It's possible to feed an organic cow organic corn and still meet the organic requirements. Remember when we talked about the corn-fed cow versus the grass-fed cow, and the grass-fed cow always wins in terms of quality, fat content, fat quality, all of those things, taste even, all of those things. So an organic beef doesn't mean that it's been grass-fed. Something to very much watch out for. That said, grass-fed is a label that gets thrown around all the time with regards to meat. And you might think, obviously grass-fed is what it's supposed to be, and we know this now, but there's an important reason why that is a distinction. But grass-fed is not a controlled term. Anybody can use the term grass-fed. So if you go to the grocery store and you see, oh, grass-fed, perfect, great. Well, what does that mean? Does that mean it ate grass for a month of its life? Does that mean it ate grass for all of its life? Like, what exactly does that grass-fed term mean? Grass-fed beef is going to be healthier for you. And end sentence. There's no question about that. But because that label is not as trusted as organic, it can't be, it's not regulated like organic labels are, or like the word organic is, that can make buying grass fed a little bit trickier. I'm going to make the same recommendation here as I made when I talked about the fruits and veggies, is that going local can make a world of difference. Getting to know a local farmer, getting to know a local butcher, getting to know where your local meat is coming from has can have really significant impacts on your health. If you can go to a farmer's market, or if you have, can meet a farmer and at some situation or something, you can get a referral from a friend. Have a conversation with the farmer about their growing practices. They might tell you, yep, my cows are on grass for 10 months of the year, but I do have 2 months where I need to fill in with some grain. My cows mostly don't use antibiotics, but I need to use them every once in a while to treat something. Where your comfort level is with that is entirely individual, but a farmer who is proud of what they're growing is going to love to talk to you about their growing practices. If someone isn't comfortable talking about it or doesn't want to talk about it, it means that they're probably doing something they don't want to share with you. So if you can find a local farmer that can kind of have a really open conversation about how they grow their meat, what do they use, when do they use it, that is a really good farmer person quality of meat, I'm going to say, to buy from, especially if you're comfortable with their growing practices. Something else when it comes, so I'm going to go off of cows for a second here and talk about chickens. A term that is often used when looking for chickens is free range. Okay, so what does free range mean? Essentially, it means that that chicken is given free range. They are not cooped up in a pen. They're allowed to wander around and eat whatever they find. That is how chickens are meant to live. So they are meant to be wandering around and eating. Chickens aren't so specific when it comes to the grass versus grains. They're meant to just kind of wander around and peck at what they can. So free range from in relation to a chicken is not a bad term. Like grass fed, free range is not a controlled label. Anybody can put free range on that. Anybody can put free range on it and say, oh yeah, here you go, it's healthier. Free range eggs, or well, yeah, properly done, free range eggs and chicken are more nutritious and have a much better fat profile than the non-free range, or than I'll call them conventionally grown chickens. So, but again, it does sometimes come down to a conversation with your local egg farmer, chicken farmer, about their practices, about how they work. Sometimes free range can mean they're grown in a big building, eating just like, one type of seed, and they have access to a little door at the other end that they never go to. So again, conversation, find someone who's open about talking about this and their growing practices, and I guarantee that you'll have a better quality product, taste, all of those things, health benefits, from a local farmer or a small farmer or someone that you know who's willing to have this conversation about food. So is organic meat always the answer? No. But knowing what you're looking for when you're looking for meat, knowing the things that are knowing the terms that are regulated, knowing the terms that aren't regulated. The best recommendation I can give to you when it comes to buying meat is try your best to know where your meat is coming from. I realize that that is not always possible. We are humans, we are busy humans, we have a lot going on, things are difficult, there's lots happening. But if you are interested in getting engaged in the quality of your food, this is a decent place to start. There are lots of local farmers and farms that will offer CSA boxes for fruits and veggies, or you can buy a hind quarter of a cow and get all sorts of different cuts. And generally, the cost, if you have the finances to give you that buffer, the cost to buy a hind quarter, it's high up front, but over the terms of the cut of the meat, it generally isn't. It pays off in the long run usually. So as much as you can, get to know where your food is coming from. That is the best thing that I can recommend to you. Are you going to know where everything comes from? Nope. But what you can find out, look for that information. You'll become a more empowered, enlightened consumer, and you'll be able to make better choices about what works for you, because cost is a concern, availability is a concern, quality is a concern, and we really have to balance all of these things when we're thinking about buying food. So pick the things that you think you do have a little bit of input on, you do want some more information on, and have some conversations with people. I hope this was helpful information for you in terms of picking good quality food for yourself and your family, and what is, I promise, going to end up impacting in a positive way your energy, your sleep, and your health. Let me know if you have any questions. I hope you have a great day.